The question is, though, if you were in the presence of God, why would you ever break one of the two rules?
This is Shaman Omar. He's an ayahuasca shaman and a researcher of ancient religious texts. And today we discuss absolutely everything. We go through the Gnostic tradition and their perspective on the Garden of Eden, basically why Luciferians actually think the serpent was the good guy.
The serpent went to Eve, the wiser of the two sexes. Eve eats from the fruit, makes Adam eat from the fruit. They look down, they realize that was the beginning of human consciousness. They woke up from the spell.
He also explains his perspective on the apocryphal book of Enoch and why he believes that the Anunnaki and the Watchers are the same thing and why it makes perfect sense for understanding our world today.
One gives usage of plants as medicine. One gives the wisdom of making metals. One gives the correlation of the stars and the planets. We're talking about everything our entire civilization is founded on.
And of course, we discuss ancient technologies such as alchemy and why he believes these things are not science fiction and could actually be the means of creating ancient civilizations. So without further ado, grab a chair, get close to the fire, and welcome to camp. Shaman Omar, what's up, brother?
How are you? Great.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for being here, man. This is gonna be fun. You
Part
have
two.
Yeah, exactly. Part two. We had a lost one.
The lost, like
The apocryphal episode.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls. One day it'll be appeared. We experienced it, but no one else did.
Exactly. But now they're going to experience something brand new. You have a fascinating story. You're a very interesting human being.
Oh, thanks, brother.
I know you as Shaman Omar.
Yes.
Because you are one of the preeminent, great ayahuasqueros, one of the all-time great ayahuasca shamans.
All time.
The Michael Jordan of ayahuasca
gosh.
shamans.
Oh my God.
I've never had a ceremony with you, but I've
that's I'd love to ask you why.
maybe one day. I got it.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I know. When the time comes,
That's the key.
I'll call you. But I've actually spoken to some people. I forget who it was, but someone that had done a ceremony with you, and they said it was phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you.
So
It's a gift.
it's awesome, dude. So it's really cool. But not only are you an ayahuasca shaman, but you also have a very deep and rich understanding of ancient scripture, lost texts, not from one religion, but kind of all religions as they intersect in many different translations. And your understanding of sort of the spiritual nature of the universe that we live in is very deep.
Awesome.
So I want to sort of unpack that and have you kind of just explain your worldview and how you see the spiritual realm on Earth.
I'm going to go on a journey with you.
Yeah, let's do it. So
The funny thing about this is that if you were to just turn on a camera and tell me like, okay, go, I don't have anything to say. It has to be like, there has to be, in the ether, you have to pose a question, right? You have to like take an intention and form it in the form of words, right? Abracadabra, and then that space gets filled.
It's like Plato, the great dialogues. All things are done through discourse.
Yeah, sure. It's like a fish doesn't know what water is, right? But we're inside of ether. And so like when I'm talking to someone and they ask a question and then it like opens up a space, like I see that space and it needs to get filled and they open it up. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Let's finish closing that door before we open another one.
Yeah.
And that definitely got opened up through through a decade of ayahuasca and all that stuff. Like the understanding of like those spaces becomes very apparent, like a hole in the wall.
Maybe one of the first ethers we can wade through. I just had my good friend, Dr. Jeremy Hutland. He's a professor at Union College and he teaches specifically like the academic and sort of literary view of, scripture, Hebrew Bible, New Testament, and some of the apocryphal gospels, things that were omitted from the original canon, I guess, of the Bible. And one of the things that we talked about that was very interesting to me was the book of Enoch.
Yeah. When you say Bible, you're talking about New Testament.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I say Bible, I guess I'm talking about like the, NIV that I grew up reading, which is like Old Testament, New Testament. I think it's 64 books or something. Yeah,
but the question is, Old Testament from what perspective and then what timeline of perspective?
Mm-hmm.
So like the perspective of like the Old Testament in the year 1000 AD is significantly different than the Old Testament perspective from 2000 AD. So even if someone was doing their best in 2000 AD to look at something from 1000 AD, from Moses, like specifically, the perspective will change as the translations change through time. I mean, look what happens when you take something from 100 years and interpreted from 100 years ago. Imagine 2,000 years or 1,000 years. So the problem is that things become canonized in a certain way, becomes the orthodoxy, and then from there, it continues to translate.
Yeah, I want to break down some of those like early translations, some of the early manuscripts, and kind of the changes
Garden of
that
Eden
have happened.
Every single story is the same outcome.
But tell me about Book of Enoch. I'm curious. This is the one we had texted about.
Yeah.
So the Book of Enoch is interesting to me. It's this book that wasn't included in sort of the the canon that I've known,
which is odd.
Up. I'm curious. Why do you find that odd?
Because Enoch. So you've heard of Metatron. I didn't watch the whole interview.
No, it's all good.
Did he refer to Metatron?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
so a Transformer?
No, yeah, exactly. Probably where they got it from. Metatron. The concept of Metatron is what Enoch ascended into. Okay. Like the Tetragrammaton is the ascended Enoch.
What is What is the Tetragrammaton?
The symbol, the Tetragrammaton.
Okay. Yeah, I've
like
seen that.
Star.
Yeah. It's sort of like a six-sided.
The Star of David, but more.
Yeah, and it's like multi-dimensional.
Yes. Yeah, and you can take that sigil. A sigil is just the terminology for an esoteric or occult symbol. A sigil, S-I-G-I-L. You can take that sigil and you can implement over that anything. So you can take that and turn it into and dialogue it out to anything. Similarly, the symbol of the swastika in Jainism transformed into the swastika of Nazism by just flipping it the other way, and has a completely different meaning, right? Even though it still has the same exact meaning it already did, in our consciousness, it has completely changed. It has literally been inverted completely. It, in essence, meant the wheel of samsara, the never-ending cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, and was flipped to mean what they implemented it into.
So when you say Enoch became that sigil, what do you mean by that?
Well, it says that Enoch was taken to heaven, like he didn't die. He was brought to heaven, right? And then there he became the Archangel Metatron. And so that's Enoch. So when people are talking about the Archangel Metatron, they're talking about Enoch.
Interesting.
Why is he important? Because he says is Adam important? Okay.
I'd say
is Noah important?
I think so.
Okay. So Enoch was the 7th generation from Adam, and he was the grandfather of Noah. And he was the father of Methuselah. So,
So why?
That's a very small pocket of time, even though there's thousands of years, allegedly, according to, Adam lived, 1,000 years. Methuselah lived 927. These timelines. But I have a theory on that, too.
Yeah, why do people live so long back then?
Because they had the original DNA that was closest to the original creators of man. So like in the Sumerian Kings list, for example, the Sumerian Kings list, or a Book of Kings, or a list of kings, it's translated in many ways, but in essence it says from the day that it was written, which is I think carbon dated 3,500 BC, to the beginning of what you would think is, you could say at least a Sumerian civilization as we know it, where there's some form of a human, that it goes back to 155,000 years. And it has the list of the king from the first king, which would be an Anunnaki. It was not a human. And that first king ruled 50-some thousand years, and the next one ruled 22,000 years, and so on. So as you would say, let's say Adam was the first creation, he lived 1,000 years. And as we started to procreate and the DNA started to kind of wear off of the DNA from the original creation, we start to live less and less.
And that decline, you think, will be gradual, continuously?
Biblically, look at the age of the biblical prophets through the course of that time. And, and then not just that, all of the various forms of ancient understanding of the creation of man. And even the stories, the metaphysical stories of, procreating was the original sin, and it's sin against what, so it's interesting how all that works, because definitely as you water down DNA, things change. And so that's the overwhelming consensus on that, is that if you're looking at the Anunnaki concept of those who from heavens came to earth and created man, then the Adam would be the first creations, and they would live 1,000 years, all the way down. And it's interesting because then you look at the correlations between the Nephilim, right? And then
the giants.
Yeah, the biblical giants, and then the story of the Sumerians. You have the giants of the Sumerian story. You have the flood, which is the Anunnaki story, which also goes to the biblical flood story. So like there's the parallels between the two.
So there wasn't one specific event. It's just been a gradual decline of DNA that caused us to live younger.
It would appear. I mean, that's what the consensus is. I mean, the question is are they talking about something in real time, or are they telling a story? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the story of Enki and Enlil, and then you have the Norse Viking stories of Thor and Loki. They came from Asgard, two princes. One was good and cared for mankind. One didn't like mankind and wanted to rule. You know, you have these stories from every single culture.
Is this a metaphor? Or is this actually describing real events that took place?
And then is it a story that's told in real time of our actual ascension or descension? Or is it a story that's talking about a time in the past of which we know the story existed, and then appropriating the story so we can keep some sort of semblance of where we came from?
Right. Now, back to Enoch, he seems like a pretty important guy, right? He's the father of all these people. He's very much sort of, imbued into the lineage of Adam and, ascends into heaven.
Yeah.
There's some interesting things inside the book, about the Nephilim and the Watchers that sort of come down to Earth. I'm curious, do you think that's why he was left out of the canon? Or I'm curious if you have any theories as to why it was left out.
I mean, if we're talking, and when we say canon, we're talking about
like the
Council
Bible,
of Nicaea, 323 to 325 AD,
right?
Like the Roman Catholic.
Yeah. When I say Bible, I'm referring to like me going to Bible study and cracking open like an NIV.
Why was it left out? I mean,
yeah, I'm curious if you have like a theory on that.
I think that all these religions leave things out, modify, or change them for control. You're trying to unify. Remember, we're talking about Rome. So Rome was. At that point, at 325 A.D., Rome is in full control. You have a young Emperor Constantine who in essence he wasn't elected. He was the next up in line, but his uncle was very popular and basically had a war against each other. He prevailed, and he wanted to unify everything. He was 23 years old, so he's forward thinking. He's like, how can we like really take things to the next level? Well, I can't call myself Caesar, right? That's been done. That was new and exciting. And there have been how many Caesars from the time of Julius Caesar, right? So what he did was he realized, and also we have to remember the political and militaristic component of the government and the control system within Rome at that time. That's what people overlook. They overlook the actual societal and then the functional control of the governmental structure. It's not just like an emperor and a senate. You have generals, right? And generals are very important, right? I mean, right now in Ukraine, if they didn't have the support of very powerful generals, like the guy would be out of there, Right. So that's a very huge.
There's a military component that's controlling everything.
Rome, military is a lot of the parts, and so on the highest level of these militaries. A lot of these people were involved in like the cults of Mythra.
And what is that?
Mythra was an ancient religious system that came out of Iran, Persia. And so Mythra, the same story of Mythra is like parallel to the story of Jesus, the birth, death, the rebirth, the virgin birth, like the whole story, the procession of the moon. It's an identical. I'm sure you've heard of this, no?
Mm.
Really?
Mm.
The cults of Mythra.
And does this predate Christianity?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thousands of years, of course. To the extent that if you look at like the paradigm of like the divine feminine, like meaning goddess tradition, right? So you would say there's a patriarchal and a matriarchal, right? There's a God, the father, and a God, the mother. And in most cultures, there was a combination of the two. Like there was a union between them. For example, Isis and Osiris, right? But then there was always the understanding of like God in the form of like, generally speaking, a non-physical aspect of it, right? Like, for example, in Greece, they had the Titans and then they had the gods, right? And the Titans were the elements. And then the gods like Zeus and Mount Olympus was like a constriction and a materialization aspect of that. just as how the people probably worship the Anunnaki as gods, just as the people in ancient Egypt worship the pharaoh as the sons and daughters of Isis and Osiris, right? So we seem to always accept some form of some superior human that has a direct connection to our creator, right? It's just like the subservient component of our brain. But if you look at the original in Sumeria, right, you had Inanna, right? Inanna was the queen of the heavens, right? And then from Inanna, which was like a universal Mesopotamian, like the queen, right? Then after that, you have Ishtar, which was created, which was like a variation. You have Isis in Egypt, right? A lot of these other names you've probably you've heard of Isis, right?
No, the goddess of fertility.
The goddess, yeah. Well, the goddess of many things, but the highest goddess of Egypt for a very long period of time. That was a derivative, like Ishtar and Isis are like, if you look at through time, you have like Inanna, Ishtar, Isis are down here. This is Persia, this is Egypt. Well, here's Arabia to the Middle East. So it's like the same understanding of the need to give honor and energy and feed the energy of a female deity for the female traits, fertility, etc., etc. They were also tied into the arts as well.
And this was in Rome that these people were?
No, but Rome conquered these lands.
And so they picked up some of the religious customs.
Of course.
And so a lot of the generals were Mithrics.
Yeah, they were parts of the cult of Mythra. And so one of the ways that Constantine appealed to them was he started appealing. And at the time, by the way, the cult of Mythra was a very high level. So it wasn't like necessarily the average person in the Roman military. It was like the generals, like it was like the elite, The same way that they say in Hollywood, how come so much of Hollywood is Scientology? It was like the elite. There was like Thelema in Hollywood for like. There's always this like extra little cult, right? And so that's what Mythra was during those times in Rome. But the general public, there was a gigantic. There was a large amount of the general population of Rome, which makes up the massive amount of the military, who were in some variation Christian, but Christian. Canonized Christian of what you mentioned, and Christianity from an understanding that connects to Jesus, but not just Jesus the man, the story of the man as the Christ, as a representation of Christ. The concept of Christ and the early forms of Christianity existed before Jesus as well, because we're always looking for
the Savior.
We're always looking for Neo. We're all, and even when we find Morpheus, we're still looking for Neo, right? And so, there's always that component to it. So Constantine basically, knowing the Christianity aspect, later they merged the two together.
Interesting.
Think about in India there was pre-Brahmanistic Hinduism and then post-Brahmanistic Hinduism, right? Brahmin was something they just made up. They take the main gods and goddesses, right, of the religious leaders, right, which means control the people, and then the wealthy, merge them together into one, 3 in 1, and that's called Brahmin. So it was a hey, listen, we're the religious leaders, we control the souls of these people. You guys are the rulers, the wealthy, the Raja, and you control the people's the society of the people. Let's merge together and create one unification. It's happened so many times.
So this is what happened with
Rome, with
the Book of Enoch, in a way, where they were looking at it and they were like, maybe this could be an affront to basically coalescing the people.
Do you believe Jesus, you believe Jesus existed?
Right, yes. Okay.
And when Jesus walked upon the earth, he breathed air like us.
Right.
And he ate food like us,
yes.
Right? Okay. Do you feel that man, Jesus, ever said he was God? Based off what you believe he said that?
I do.
Have you read the Gospel of Thomas?
I have not.
Okay, so if you like Jesus, right?
I like Jesus.
Okay, if you like Jesus, my suggestion, the first thing you should do is go read the Gospel of Thomas.
Why? What's in the Gospel of Thomas?
Jesus' words. It's also not canonized. But you know what? When you read those, it looks like you're reading the sayings of a master, of a Buddha, of a teacher. He doesn't, and nowhere in the Gospel of Thomas, he says to the apostles, "Why do you follow me? Why do you honor me?" And he said, "Because you are anointed by the Most High." And another one said, "Because you have been blessed with the wisdom of eternal creation." And another, they all give him great compliments. And then he says, "This is true. I have been blessed, but find me he who is not from the womb of the mother, and we will all bow before this person."
And who is he referring to?
Nobody. He's trying to humanize himself. It's like me not coming in here in an ayahuasca outfit.
Right.
Because there's no reason to do that. I don't need to dress myself up to look spiritual.
He who is not of the womb of the mother.
It's true. I have been touched by the Most High. Find me he who is not from the womb of a mother, and we will all bow.
So he's saying, I'm still from the womb.
We'll all find someone worthy of bowing when we see someone who
does something miraculous
transcends humanity, the human experience. And again, like, I understand the sensitivity of all these things and all the religions, and in no way do I'm not, I can talk to anybody about any religion in their own languages, and I try to dance in the place where they feel comfortable, but at the same time, plant seeds and questions, right? So it's not about I don't believe in a human God, right? But if you read the Gospel of Thomas, which was not canonized because it doesn't say he's a God, because it was already in the hands of the people. So you can't, you have to not canonize it. You can't just change it, right? You can only change so much, right? Like, if you want to have election meddling, you can only modify so many millions of votes.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have 58 million fake votes, right? There's so much you can get away with.
Without
right?
upheaval.
Without a complete upheaval.
Right.
And ultimately that's what happened, though, because when the genius of Rome was that they allowed everyone to worship their gods and goddess traditions. That's how they were able to rule Britannia, parts of Germania, Francia, all of Europe. They were able to rule because they allowed, in essence, religious freedom, right? And so, oh my gosh, the consulate in Germania is getting overrun by the Germanic tribes. Quickly, they sound the horn to Rome. Rome was able to raise up garrisons or a complete military and march through all these foreign lands because they would honor the gods, the local gods. They would here, we burn this, and they'd go through without
freedom of religion.
They were allowed to move their military through the Roman Empire, in essence, through these tribal areas without having a problem because they let everyone have freedom of religion. And so when they canonized the books, created the Roman Catholic Church, all the other stuff was banned. That was, in essence, the downfall of Rome from one perspective. It was also the rise of Rome from what we see it today, from a Vatican controlling 2.2 billion people.
Interesting.
It's the rebirth of Rome in many ways.
Hey guys, really quick. Did you know that on this day in history in 1582, Pope Gregory introduced the Gregorian calendar, which most of the world still uses today? Or that in 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, into orbit? This event triggered the space race between the USA and the USSR. I learned these facts pretty recently, actually, on the S'more Camp newsletter. That's right, S'more Camp, the inner sanctum. For this kind of show, we do a ton of research. I have different researchers and friends that help me find information, and not everything can make the episode. Either it's too crazy, it's too weird or gory, and it will get demonetized on YouTube, or it's just additional and it doesn't always make it, but it always makes it into the S'more Camp Inner Sanctum newsletter. So if you are interested in expanding your mind, learning new information, and being the most interesting person into every room you step into, check it out in the description or this QR code right here. Now let's get back to the show. So these things that are in Enoch, for example, the Nephilim, the Watchers, does that appear in other ancient texts, and what do you make of that? This idea of the Watchers? I know people have kind of compared them to Anunnaki and things like that, some type of divine force that comes to Earth and breeds with humans. I'm curious if that appears other places.
Well, the story is in various aspects of the Bible. When you have the story of Job, right? you have the concept of, I can't remember whether it says, what is it? It says, in your Bible, it says Satan or Lucifer was which one was sent down to test Job?
I don't know. I always use those things synonymously, I'll be honest.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're not the same thing.
Why?
Because there's no such thing as Lucifer in the aspect of it was made up.
I thought Lucifer was like the light bearer. This is like an angel that was with God that then got cast down into hell.
But that's the thing though. That's from the book of Enoch, but the angel's name was Azazel. It wasn't Lucifer. Lucifer is a misinterpretation from the book of Isaiah.
And what is misinterpreted?
The name. There's no Lucifer is Latin for I was just talking about this earlier today. The Halil, the story. It's let's see. Book of Isaiah 14:12, right? The Isaiah is speaking to the king of Babylon, right? And he tells him, in essence, "Oh, look at you, bright shining one. Oh, look at you, O morning star, brighter than everyone else, only to fall with the inevitable rise of the sun." Like meaning, enjoy your false light now because something's coming for you, in essence, right? And so the word in Hebrew is Hallel, I believe, which means like morning star, or in essence, which by the way is a reference to the planet Venus, also, which is a different subject. But and so when the book, at the time the Septuagint was the Greek versions of that, right? And there's a lot of talk about the Septuagint. But then when it's canonized into Roman Catholicism, everything was translated to Latin. So the Hebrew word for morning star, I believe, is Halil, and the Latin word is Lucifer. Then Lucifer became personified and created into a story, taking bits from Azazel as the leader of the Watchers, associating and attributing it to the story of Lucifer as a counterproduction of God and Jesus. He had to have a counterproduction. You had to have Conor McGregor needed a Khabib. Right. So they're like, who is the Khabib? Okay, we're going to bring Satan and Lucifer. It's completely made up. Now the concept of Lucifer or the light bearer exists through the history of time as, the Arthurian tales of a Merlin, right? There's the Lord of the Rings. There's Gandalf, right? There's always like someone who comes. Enoch's the first Merlin, but when you have the 200 Watchers, it just depends on the perspective of how all of these things, Mark, that we're talking about, just depends on which perspective are you looking at. And if you don't understand both perspectives, then your mind has been enslaved to a perspective that you're told to dance around.
Right. So then break down
both sides.
So break down the two perspectives of the Watchers, or maybe the many perspectives.
Or Lucifer. Let's start with Lucifer.
Sure. Okay. So what are the different perspectives of Lucifer? Yeah.
If we can see both sides to any one religion, one story, any Garden of Eden, Lucifer, any of these stories, you have to understand both. Thor and Loki, right? Mm-hmm. You can. Then there's what's another one?
You had mentioned the Egyptian one, Anki, I think.
Enki and Enlil. No, that's a Sumerian. Enki and Enlil. No, but we have, for example, what's the Greek tale of the beast?
Leviathan?
No, that's different. No,
it's Greek?
Yeah, they made movies about it.
Prometheus?
No, I thought that too. Hold on, watch that. I got you.
I can see it coming in. I can see it filing in. It's a Greek.
Grendel, Beowulf and Grendel.
Beowulf.
Right?
Yeah.
Now we see the movie from Beowulf's perspective, but then they make the movie The Grendel.
And all of a sudden you're like,
yeah. You make the Hunchback of Notre Dame. He's like, but then you show the movie about him and you humanize him. You have the aspect, right? And so we have these things. So it's like Beowulf and Grendel. Well, we're taught Beowulf's perspective. What a great hero. He destroyed this evil thing, Grendel, that was scaring everybody and taking children in the middle of the night. But then you see the perspective of Grendel and you're like, no, he was actually there's two perspectives. Now, which one's right? That's where our moral guidance goes into, right? And
so I feel like you're touching on the philosophy like Gnosticism.
Gnosticism from one perspective, but Gnosticism in and of itself, classically speaking, does satanize the demiurge as an intentional deceiver. But there are variations of Gnosticism through time that said that no one asked to be created, and thus there's a difference between intentionally doing something to deceive and doing something that may have created an outcome, but not knowing what that outcome could be. For example, like I don't know if they still do, but it was like law schools would argue Cain and Abel. So Harvard Law, let's say, that one side is prosecution and one side is defense. So the prosecution says Cain killed Abel out of anger. He picked it up, hit him, killed him, boom, first-degree murder. And the defense goes, not so fast. If no one had ever died, and these are the first two people created on earth, then how would Cain know that what he did to Abel was going to kill him? A lesser offense, right? And so a lesser 20
and
years.
he deceived the guy, so he had justification.
And now we're going for 10 years, not 20, not life, right? And so that's the game. That's the game that everyone's playing.
So now break down with Lucifer. What are some?
So Lucifer, two perspectives. You can say in your King James perspective, Lucifer was also the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
Yes, I don't like Lucifer. I think he's a bad guy.
Well, I don't think these aren't guys. That's the thing. None of this is human. So Garden of Eden perspective, traditional is that the traditional perspective was that the serpent was sent down or was already there and appealed to Eve. Eve was made from the rib of Adam, and thus it was less connected to God, right? Less creation, going back to what we said about direct connections, right? So because she was made from Adam's rib, not direct, that she was like the first full creation, not purely of the source of God, right? Or Anunnaki, whatever you want to say. And so the serpent went to Eve, the lesser of the two sexes, tricked her. Why do you not eat from the fruit from the tree of knowledge?
God said not to.
I said, I must not eat from the fruit, for I will surely die. Nonsense, you will not surely die. Who says you will surely die? I know I will surely die, for my God says it is so. My God says it is so. And then the serpent says, you will not surely die. You will see as your God knows, and you will know as your God knows and see as your God knows. Right? Eat. Right? Then Adam, worried about being alone, eats too. God goes to the Garden of Eden and banishes them, right? How long were they in the Garden of Eden? 3 hours or something? It's a small amount. It wasn't years. They didn't even have time to
do it. Might have been a weekend. I don't know.
It was not even. It was pretty quick.
Oh, that's so embarrassing to fumble it like a couple hours in.
Well, the question is, though, if you were in the presence of God, would you ever listen to anything tell you to do anything to break one of the only two rules there? No.
But if you got free will.
But you would not. If the heavens as described is opening up and the angels are looking down like, oh my God, this is so good. And everyone's like, wow, look at this. Wow, amazing. And you're like, thank you. And you have everything there. Why would you ever break one of the two rules or the few rules that you were told?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Never would. We wouldn't. If you and I are in the Garden of Eden and we're directly connected to God,
right.
We're not listening to anyone tell us, do this and you're gonna know God.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right?
But then also I'm like, when I was a toddler, my parents said not to do stuff, and my brother would be like, nah, do it. And then I would do it. My parents would be like, what the fuck did you do?
Yeah, but but you're not.
But my parents aren't God. Sure.
Yeah, but you're not in the Garden of Eden and with heavens looking down on you.
Fair.
In paradise.
Right.
There's nothing else other than this, allegedly. They didn't know of the existence of anything outside of this existence. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
The Luciferian perspective is that the serpent went to Eve, the wiser of the two sexes and the less under like the program control, and says the same exact words. Why have you not eaten from the fruit from the tree of wisdom? I must not, for I will surely die. Nonsense, how will you surely die? I know I will surely die, for my God says it is so. You will know as your God knows and see as your God sees. Eve eats from the fruit, right? Makes Adam eat from the fruit. They look down, they realize they're standing in the middle of the garden naked, and that was the beginning of human consciousness. That's the Luciferian perspective. They woke up from the spell of thinking they're in paradise. That's the Luciferian perspective.
And so who would the Luciferians say God was?
Well, it's not about Luciferian by itself. We have to remember Luciferian and Satan. By the way, I'm not. Because your audience go, he's a Luciferian. No, I'm not a Luciferian. I'm just talking about a subject.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Describing what something.
Yeah, we can talk about
Nazism, and you're not a Nazi.
Yeah, we can talk about.
You're not a Nazi, right?
No, no, I'm Afghan, bro. We don't have nothing to do with that. No, the Lucifer and Satanism, like Lucifer. Why do you think that Masonry is founded in Luciferianism? Albert Pike was.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
The Freemasons are like
on the highest level. What's the Illuminati? There's a functional mechanical aspect within society, which is nefarious for sure. And then they have their priests. And their priests write outwardly about the light and of Lucifer, right? But then behind the scenes, you have the satanic aspect of things. They're not the same. Luciferianism from a perspective and Satanism is not connected. That's what we have to understand. Like there are Gnostics that in essence their ideology, belief systems would fall in the 90th percentile in the lane of Luciferianism. But in no way would they be Satanists. But then there are Satanists that would use the aspects of the understanding of Lucifer and implement that to create Satanism, which would be the false light. The inversion. The word Satan, shaitan, means adversary. So when you say like Satan is the adversary, what adversary of what? Well, you would say God. But then what do you mean by God? You would say goodness, truth,
light,
love. So the adversary of that would be Satan.
Which seems not good.
Yeah, of course, that's evil. Satanism can be anything. There's Satanism within all the religions. Anything why are all these priests, rabbis, imams, why is there a long history of these of religious figures molesting children? Is that not pure ritualistic Satanism?
It's
of course.
Evil.
It's ritualistic. It's worse than just some psychopath being some kid on the street. This is like inside of the house of God.
Right.
This is the most evil thing you can imagine.
Right.
But those people are not Luciferians. A Luciferian, in essence, is a person who's following like a Gnostic version of trying to find like they would say like Enlightenment, the Enlightenment period. The 1820s to the 1920s was called the New Thought movement, right? The New Age. That's considered Satanism to religious figures. Now you had Madame Blavatsky, right? You had Thoreau, you had Atkinson, you had a bunch of these thought leaders, right? But then you also have Marxism. You have Marxism by itself sends a picture, and you have a lot of variation of intellectual, psychological. You have things that were created during those times that ended up being very, very negative, and were the structure or the framework of which the handlers, right, in essence Satanists, would use to implement into the society in the name of righteousness and goodness to keep us more enslaved.
So there's some Luciferians that reject Satanism, or many.
Yeah, they're not mutually they're not mutually exclusive. But then there are some that would use, like for example, what Kabbalah and Judaism. Okay, you can correlate them together, intertwined, but the Kabbalah is not in the 5 books of Moses.
Right. It's a sort of a mystical interpretation of Jewish law.
You could say that also about the Zohar, and you could say that also about the Talmud. Is it a part of Judaism? Sure. But without that, is it, but if you reject it, are you not Jewish? Like, for example, in Islam, you have the Quran, right? But then you have all these extra hadiths. If you don't accept any of these hadiths or these companions' words, are you not Muslim now? No. But if you absorb it, you're absorbing it, trying to go deeper into it, right? So you could look at these things as additional tools, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. So that's the Lucifer component. Now you said the Watchers.
Yeah. So and that's described in Enoch. Like what do you make of the Watchers?
Taking our lens, let's apply that to the Watchers. Now, the biblical perspective collectively It doesn't exist. It's not canonized. But once you have been canonized and you're looking at this book and you stumble upon it, you're looking at it. Your framework of looking at it is that the Watchers are good or bad.
Kind of bad.
Okay. Everyone would say the same.
Yeah.
Evil.
Yeah.
Right? And so they came down, right? There was a war in the heavens. The story, let's talk framework. There's a war in the heavens. And some of these angels, right, were cast down, sent down, whatever it was. And they fell. Actually, the location is called Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is a mountain between Israel, Lebanon, Jordan. Like it's like in the middle of all. And the top of it's like cut. Like this. Like, how is the top of the mountain cut? So that's where it occurred. Mount Hermon. And they came down and what is the story to you? They tricked mankind, or they gave us, what is something negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
They gave us nefarious information, right? But have you looked at what they gave, what each of these Watchers gave? It's in the book. One, and their names are there. One gives the usage of plants as medicine. One gives the ability, the wisdom of metallurgy, making metals. One gives the correlation of the stars and the planets. One gives, we're talking about everything that, that our entire civilization is founded on.
Mm-hmm.
And still today, still trying to develop. Now, you could say on one way, this is horrible because this is how we've gotten so far away from God. Or you could say this is how humanity has grown to be where we are today, whether that's good or bad. And we've always had good and bad at all times, right?
Interesting.
At all times. So it's just a matter of a perspective.
What about the Nephilim, the giants?
The sons of God bred with the daughters of man and created the beasts.
Yeah.
That's in the Anunnaki too. They were fucking the human women and creating these beasts, and that's where they decided to make the Great Flood. Same concept.
And does that exist in other scriptures as well?
The Anunnaki, of course, the Great Flood. But I think there's been more than one flood. I think we've had a few floods. I think we've definitely had a few floods, at least two.
And these are global floods?
Yeah.
Regional,
known world type of flood.
Makes sense.
Like if you go to like Petra and you look at these mountains and you drive, look, not even just Petra. If you go to Wadi Rum, Wadi Musa, go all the way to Petra in Jordan, you can clearly, and grab your phone and look at where sea level is. You can see clearly that this whole place was underwater at some point.
Yeah, the Sahara was underwater.
Exactly.
The Rashat structure, have you seen that? The eye of the Sahara?
For sure. They say that there's like salt on top of the Great Pyramids.
Yeah.
There's like no water, salt water nearby. But you can see clearly, and you can see like whole like doorways carved in Petra. Like no one just cut a hole into. Have you been to Petra?
Mm-mm.
Okay, this is like one of the most amazing.
It's beautiful. I've seen pictures.
The pictures don't even do it justice. They built a civilization inside of mountains.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
It's impossible. Like we couldn't do it if we wanted to now. And then it's not just the one thing, the picture everyone sees with the treasury. It's miles of these.
You've been inside?
Yeah, I've been all over this place, all over the mountains, the deserts. Camps, ayahuasca over there, everything.
And Petra is just
it's unbelievable.
And when did they say it was developed? Like, do you know what?
They say the Nabateans created it 22 to 2,500 years ago, but no way.
Do you think it was built longer before that?
Yeah.
And then those people, that technology was gone.
Even further, they say that this opening inside of this mountain was natural. No. When you see it, they clearly and carved the entire thing through the mountain
with ancient technology that got lost.
Yeah, they did in ancient times with technology we may not have now. There's either laser, some form of melting aspect. Like there is no way. There's no. When you see it, you're like, there's no chance. No one did this. There's no one sitting here and picking away at this. So they'd still be working on the project right now. 2,500 years is not enough time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Even just carving through the mountain. These mountains are high, very, very high.
And do you think this is like practical technology they were using, or do you think it was like spiritual technology?
I think in between. I think in between. Just like how the element of fire, like the essence that is created amongst the fire is a specific element. And if you light a candle and you look at the fire, right, you can feel the heat, you can see the light, right? But then there is the essence of the fire itself, the element that is the fire. If you were to able to capture that element that is the fire, that's its own new element, and it's its own dimension. So if you were able to harness that, look, what is an atom? What is splitting the atom?
Mm-hmm.
Same, it's just a part of space. Everything is atoms.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't. We'll go there. I'm gonna do a retreat there. By the way, like 10 days. Start off in Wadi Rum, like biblical.
Wow.
Because it's like everyone's like, oh, over Israel and Jerusalem. Like, yeah, great. But don't forget these Abraham and Moses and they all had these visions over here. They were over here, and the spirits told them go there.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have those visions over there. They had them in Jordan.
What do you make of the pyramids as far as like lost technology goes?
Man.
Do you think it was thousands of people pulling bricks around, or do you think...
impossible.
What do you make of it?
No, I mean, there's been so many people that have dispelled that.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like? There's over 2 whatever million stones, and I mean, like,
yeah, it's insane.
Over 2 million stones, and each one's perfectly cut, and the stone quarries are 100 miles away. Like, come on, man. No, levitation.
Really?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's an interesting perspective, because we have to look at what the old kingdom Egypt like knew, right? So old kingdom Egypt was not called Egypt; it was called Alchemet.
Mm-hmm.
So Alchemet had two sciences. It had chemistry, the science of matter, and it had alchemy, the science of spirit. And alchemy means the separation of spirit from matter. So if I grab ayahuasca vine and chacruna leaf and I put it in the water with fire, the spirit leaves the plant, right? Because spirit lives in water. Our body is 60-70% water, housing a spirit we call the soul. So that's the alchemy of it. So if you take the plants and put it in the water, and through heat, the spirit leaves and it goes into the water. You pour it in a cup. Now you drink it. Now the alchemy goes into this body and then takes us on the spiritual journey. I mean, what's exactly what ayahuasca is? That's what any form of plant medicines that you're drinking in a liquid form, which is the highest spiritual aspect of an experience. But Alchemet was like a rainforest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's where they had access to all the most amazing amounts of plant technologies that opened up many dimensions. They called the Nile River, Alchemet means the black lands, because the Nile River, the soil was so rich that it was black. That's why it was called the black lands. But that's why later the reference of black magic comes from the black lands of Alchemet. That's how alchemy got negative, right? Don't have the direct experience yourself. It's bad, Like, if you had the fruit, would you eat it? That's the big question. Are we going to take someone else's word that it's negative?
Interesting.
So all these religious frameworks are saying, hey, someone else had the direct experience. You don't have to worry about that. We'll tell you exactly what you're supposed to hear, think, feel, and pass judgments on everything you've ever heard. Now go have fun and make money.
Are there any like ancient texts that talk about like the alchemy of the Egyptians or of
Kemetic people?
Yeah,
sure. I mean, a lot of that stuff it exists through time, but it had been suppressed, and like the burning of the Alexandria, the Library of Alexandria. That was like the first thing that happened after the Roman Catholic Church. They burned that heretical temple of false information. Millions and millions of scrolls of who knows how long was done there. But every once in a while we see some scrolls. I mean, there's unbelievable texts that we have the Dead Sea Scrolls everyone knows about from Qumran. There's other less known texts like the Ugaritic text, which describes the Elohim in the aspect of the Watchers that now we're going full circle to that. But the Kemetic philosophy was the spine of Mother Kemet was the Nile River. And so they built those pyramids along the Nile, specifically along the body of Mother Kemet, right? And so that's why where the solar plexus would be, which was like the power source, that's where the three great pyramids are. And those are aligned with Orion's belt, right? And they believe, like the Sumerians believed that they were created by the Anunnaki who came from Nibiru. But the ancient Egyptians believed that their creators came from Sirius, right, from Orion's belt, and so they say they were created by different entire civilizations.
Interesting.
Yeah, and by the way, around the same exact time. 150,000, 125 to 155,000 years. And we have to remember 25,000 years is crazy, but it's hard to say. I mean, America is not even 300 years old. Look how much can happen in 300 years.
Right.
They say like the universe is between 13.6 to 13.8 billion years. That's 200,000 years difference. Like,
yeah. It's
like we just
error.
accept it.
Yeah.
But there's no such thing as a scientific fact. There's only theory.
Mm-hmm. So take me through the Anunnaki. Where does this show up? Like, where does like this idea that we talk about the Anunnaki, where does that come from in, ancient texts?
There were two major like findings. One was in the 1800s and one was in the early 1900s. And they basically found like a gigantic cavern that had hundreds of thousands of these cuneiform tablets, in hundreds of thousands, right? And so unlike Egypt, Greece, Rome, that wrote on papyruses, they wrote in cuneiform on clay tablets and then fired it in a kiln and stored it under the earth.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We can put a picture up on screen right now, but it's literally like these little like form presses into soft clay that create like
and they put it in they fire it in the kiln, make it hard.
Yeah.
And then they store it under the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So why they're just writing a bunch of stories? Like they're writing their history. So
what's on these tablets?
I mean, the creation, so much. I mean, we didn't know how to decode it for a long period of time. And there were several people who actually were able to first start to decode these tablets. One of the guys was this guy named Dr. Stephen Doriel, who did like a large amount of the decoding, who quarterbacked like a team. And he later started an organization called the Great White Brotherhood. But the Great White Brotherhood meaning like white angels, like angels of light. And he was in Colorado.
That was a little sketchy. The Great White Brotherhood.
I know.
It sounds like a prison gang, dude. It sounds like
a Nazi SS within the secret society within the SS.
Yeah.
No, Great White meaning like the Great White Light, like the angels of like the angelic biblical depictions of angels.
Interesting.
And he moved the organization to like somewhere in Colorado, wherever Tesla was also. The same place. And so he apparently uncovered a bunch of stuff that he was able to learn how to harness.
Oh, wait, who was that?
His name was Dr. Stephen Doriel. I can't remember so much about him, but he was one of the decoders. Also, I believe, who's the big psychologist?
Freud?
Carl Jung.
Yeah.
So Carl Jung is like and remember, all these people are involved in mysticism, and they're all parts of organizations. Like so many of these people are parts of different organizations. Like Carl Jung is like Rosicrucian, like a lot of Germans
Theosophical societies.
Theosophical Society, and they blend between them as well. But that's why a lot of the Sumerian cuneiform tablets, I think they're under Jung codexes. So you can read the codexes, which is a translation of things. Now, when we say like the Anunnaki, those would be like the creators.
And that's what these people, these are Sumerians.
Yeah. They believe they were created by the Anunnaki.
And what is the Anunnaki? Like, take me through the mythology of the Anunnaki.
They believe that the Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru that travels in an elliptical orbit around the Earth in like a 3,200 year procession, right? And they had a problem with their skies. And so they came to Earth to mine for gold. And there was nowhere to mine for Earth. There was no one here. So they created the man, right? And man, from an existing animal that was here with their own DNA, genetic modification, created man as a slave race. There was Enki and Enlil. One treated mankind good and one bad. And with the bad, they started fucking the females, right? And creating this situation, the offsprings were the Nephilim. Now, the interesting part is they said that they were mining for gold to use the gold to heal the skies of Nibiru. But yet science has proven that if you take gold particles and release it into our sky, it will bond together molecularly and heal our atmosphere. So this is what they said they came for, and we now know that it's true. This is crazy. It's crazy stuff. These people are drawing circular planets circling a sun in temples all around the world.
Thousands and
but in
thousands of years ago.
1492, Columbus couldn't get funding to sail because they're afraid he's going to fall off the flat Earth.
Yeah, I don't know if I even buy that.
No, I mean Magellan was imprisoned for 6 years because he wouldn't retract the statement that in fact the Earth moves around the sun, not the sun moves around the Earth. I mean, somehow we like lost so much information.
Yeah, interesting.
That's pretty well documented in ancient civilizations that didn't have telescopes.
Even like Hindus have like pretty sophisticated knowledge of, you know, like planets and celestial bodies moving around.
I mean, you've seen the Mayan calendar. Like, they don't have telescopes.
Yeah.
Like, didn't we just discover Pluto in like 1972? But somehow our ancestors knew. But to finish on the Watchers, right? The Watchers they came down, right? And these were supposed to be, in essence, like the fallen ones.
And when you say Watcher, you're talking about Enoch now.
The Book of Enoch. Yeah. The fallen angels come down and bestow these gifts or curses upon mankind, right? There's the whole story.
Depending how you see it.
However you see it. But the interesting part is that when we look at what these beings were, right? They came from they were the angels, right? Now, if you say they were the angels, then that means that they came angels and God. Now, Christianity brought us God and angels. But in Judaism, the concept of angels goes in with Elohim, and Elohim means gods, of which, yes, God. The word is a plural word. Now it's referenced, and it's become more and more referenced as time progresses. Like rabbinical Judaism, it becomes just like how they say, oh, when we're saying Adonai, when we're saying Yahweh, this is all just the same name for one God. El Shaddai, everything is just one God. Like Christians say, yes, Jesus, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, that's God, right? It's like, but it's not originally that, actually. As a matter of fact, there are specific things. For example, Elohim, there were many kinds of Elohim. And the interesting part is one of the least like talked about ancient texts of all time is called the Ugaritic text, right? The Ugaritic is a language, a Semitic language, right? And so it was found in Syria. Now remember, biblical times, you have Canaan, you have from Lebanon down through Israel, Palestine, right? And to parts of Egypt, across the Dead Sea into what was Jordan today, up into parts of what is Iraq today, which was Babylon, which is Mesopotamia, all the way up encompassing Syria. It's a pretty large landmass. And so these Ugaritic texts are 1500 BC, right? Which is obviously a long time ago, but it's potentially at the exact same time as Moses, or potentially 300 years before Moses. Moses is, they say, 1200 BC. These are like 1500 BC carbon dated, right? And in there, it specifically talks about the variations of what God is. And the way they basically say is that each tribe, each kingdom, don't think of kingdoms of castles. Saudi Arabia was a bunch of kings, but they were just nomadic Bedouins that have tents. They were kings.
Like the UAE, these are emirates.
Yeah, but now they have a proper kingdom because of oil. But before,
but prior to 1940,
they were in a tent like this, brother. You're the king of Cam Gangnan.
Let's go, dude.
This is your kingdom.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I'm a guest. I'm the shaman in the kingdom. You have a shaman. You're official.
My liege.
No, you.
I'm the liege. Okay.
Yeah.
My noble servant.
Yeah, I bow to you, and then they bow to me, and that's how it works. And then there's people who are giving us their sons to fight the war, and in return, you're going to get to sit and eat at our dinner table because we have the best food because you got it for us.
Sounds awesome.
It's just silly how people subscribe to these formats. But
so we had these kingdoms.
Yeah, there were kingdoms all over the place. Kingdoms of the Phoenicians, right? There was Moab, there was Media, there was all through even in just the land of Israel, there was like 4 or 5 different kingdoms. And the interesting part is that each one of these kingdoms had a specific god, right? But all of those, quote, gods were all understood to be a part of the Elohim, right? So each tribe had a land, and the land had a god. And collectively, this is what you would think of as angels, which were Elohim. And then there was El Elyon, which would be like the commander or the highest one. And then beyond that was El, which is the supreme creator, God, in the non-physical depiction, right? This was what they all understood this to be. Like in the Hebrew Bible, it says there were 70 Elohim for 70 nations after the flood. So what does that mean?
That's in the Bible.
Yeah, 70 nations and 70 Elohim.
Do you know where that is?
In the Hebrew Bible. It's not going to be in the one you're talking about.
Got you.
Of course not. That's the point. So if you have 70 nations are separate, but there's one humanity, sure. But how could you have 70 separate gods, which are called Elohim? Elohim is a class. So if you say ghost, you can say ghost, you can say prophet, you can say anything. You can say mankind, but there's many kinds of man, right? So the word Elohim was always referred to as the plural perspective, and through time, it became this singular aspect. Like in the Ugaritic text, it specifically states that El was the supreme non-physical creator of existence itself. El Elyon is like the first. In Hebrew, they have this amazing understanding of like God in the non-physical form, and then which cannot be observed in any aspect, and then through something called Simsim, there's a constriction, and the constriction is to allow you to present something, right? That's how Moses would see or communicate with a spirit in a fire, right? It's a constriction, of which we are a part of. We are a very dense constriction. That's why we can actually touch ourselves, right? But the idea is that the Elohim would be what you call angels. Now, Yahweh, right? As God, as the highest God, was not how it was spelled out in this Ugaritic text from 1500 BC.
How's it spelled?
It's saying that Yahweh was one of the lower Elohim. In essence, it says that Yahweh, all Elohim, but there were senior Elohim and minor Elohim.
And they were all under El.
Yeah. El, everything is created from El. Right? That's why Elohim, El Elyon, El Shaddai. That's why all the angels have Michael, Azazel, Azrael, Uriel. Everything is a depiction, a component, and as a part of, into one, right? Raphael, all of that refers to the supreme God, right? The non-physical, remember, the non-physical, right? In Zoroastrian, they say God is known as, my favorite word for it, is Ahura Mazda. Ahura Mazda means the uncreated one, right? The uncreated one, from which all creation occurs. So nice. It's a great one. It's also one of the oldest ones. That's why it's clean. So each one of these nations, each one of these kingdoms, right, had a tribe and a part of land in Canaan, and they had their own God. They had their own God, of which they all understood goes into the one highest one, El Elyon, which was, and then beyond the firmament is El, right?
And this is in the Ugaritic text.
Yeah, Ugaritic text, but it traces through because the Phoenicians in modern-day Lebanon said the same thing. All of the tribes in modern-day Jordan, modern-day Syria, which is where the Ugaritic texts are from, the tribes of the Baal. If you go look up any of these things, they all had, like they said, okay, Baal, right? Baal was a god, okay, but it was an Elohim, and they all understood that it was their god. The same way that people take archangels, the same way that in Hinduism, they recognize. They say, "Oh, there's a supreme creator, but I'm a devotee of Kali." It's the same thing. So it's like, and by the way, I didn't become fully clear on this until I was literally on top of the mountain in the Valley of Moses in Wadi Musa on ayahuasca during the sunrise. When I was telling you, when I was looking for a lighter to light the burning bush, and I couldn't find the lighter, so I looked down and I just kind of breathed it in, and I looked down, and I realized, like, oh shit. This is just This is just like one understanding. It's not that these different tribes were all pagans. They all believed in the same thing. They just had devotion to a different Elohim, which later became God and angels when Yahweh, because even in Canaanite books that are 686 BC, Yahweh was considered one of, there was Yahwism. There was Yahwism, which was devotion to Yahweh as God, right? And in the Ugaritic text, it says that Yahweh was one of the like lesser deities, and he was an Elohim with a people who didn't have a land. And so, and so then later you see with Moses goes, where did Moses get? Moses escapes Egypt. He killed the guard. He was Hebrew. He saw them mistreating these Hebrew people. He killed a guard who was beating a woman. He ran away. During his flight, he saw two women, right, next to a well. He met one of them, liked her. She says, "I want to marry each other. You're going to have to get my father's approval." She was from, they say Midia or Moab, but in essence, it's modern day Jordan. They went to the father, who was a high priest, and worshipped El, and sent Moses up to the mountain of El, which is like, right, for whatever reason, where he saw the burning bush, where he had the revelation to go back and tell the Pharaoh, let my people go, and then take them to the land of Israel and claim it. It's 1500 BC. They already said this concept. 300 years later is when the story happened.
Interesting. So then why did he rebuke the people when they were worshiping Baal?
Well, because in the land of modern day Israel, they were worshiping Baal. They were worshiping Baal, so there can only be one God in the land.
And that's Yahweh.
Clearly. I mean, yeah. But then at the same time, that's the same thing because then you move forward through Christianity, right? And Christianity would say the God from the Garden of Eden. And then Islam says the God from the Garden of Eden. And the same God from the Garden of Eden concept is the same exact name for God. So that means now it's God and angels. It's God and angels. But in the original things, it was gods. And then hierarchy of gods.
In the Ugaritic text.
But it's in all of them, though, because if you look at like the Greeks, there were the Titans. And the Titans were the elements, like the elemental forces that created the substances that create the ability for the earth to materialize. And from there, the gods were created, right? You have the personifications of gods. You have Zeus and you have Athena, right? And you have all these things. And they created man, right? They created man, and then they like or don't like. And then Prometheus, who was a Titan, saw how they were treating man and then stole fire, right? And brought it to mankind. And from there, he was captured and banished, where he was going to have, where he was banished for eternity, right? Stealing fire from the gods on Mount Olympus and bringing enlightenment to the mankind. It's like the same story over and over and over,
all these different cultures,
all over the place, nonstop. And so it's like, so that's the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch, in essence, is talking about a group of Elohim that came down to earth, saw mankind, bestowed information and abilities and understanding in some way, whether that was good or bad. And then the question is, what's good and what's bad?
What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because it's 2024 and it's time to talk about something important. When you are seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Yes, that's right. The world is a crazy place, and one person's negligence can result in another's settlement. And that's why I got to talk to you about Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and over 1,000 lawyers. Yes, these are the big boys. You know them, you see their billboards all over the world. If you ever drove down I-90 from Florida to New York, I'm telling you, you've seen the billboards, all right? Have you ever watched a UFC fight? You've seen them right on the banner. I'm telling you, these are the biggest guys in the game, all right? With over $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients, Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting to get you full and fair compensation. The annoying thing with most attorneys is that in order to submit a claim, you got to call them up, you got to talk to their people, you got to go back and forth on the emails, you got to hope that they see it. They might charge you just to even look at their claim. Here's the cool thing with Morgan & Morgan. With 8 clicks or less, you can submit a claim and one of their licensed attorneys will take a look at it and get back to you. It's that easy. It's like ordering something off Amazon. It's just a couple clicks. You can submit your claim very easily and cheap. Yeah, how about $0? That's how much it costs to submit a claim with Morgan & Morgan. Extremely easy, no fee required. So, if you are ever injured, you can go check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. That's right, unless they win for you. Unless they fight and get you compensation, you're not paying a single dollar. That's a pretty good deal. So, for more information, go to forthepeople.com/Gagnon. That's correct, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, that's pound 529 from your cell phone. That's for the people, forthepeople.com/Gagnon, or dial pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. This is a paid advertisement. Now let's get back to the show after this short disclaimer. What's up, guys? We're going to take a break really quick because I got to tell you about an amazing service known as Blue Chew. That's right. Blue Chew is a service that basically delivers this chewable tablet to your door whenever you want, once a week, once a month. I don't even know if they could do it that frequently, but they'll send it right to your door. You don't have to go to the doctor and have some awkward conversation with some guy in a lab coat, some dude that's judging you, probably, if I had to guess. With Blue Chew, it's super discreet. The packaging is discreet. It's just a couple questions on their website, and they will send you chewable tablets that have basically the same active ingredients as like a Viagra or a Cialis, but at the fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. It's great. It truly is. I mean, one time I was in the woods and we were cold and it was raining, and I pitched a tent with the help of Blue Chew, and everyone gathered under it, and we were safe, and it saved me and a lot of lonely people. So if you're interested in Blue Chew, here's how you get it. You're going to go to bluechew.com and use the promo code Gagnon. That's right, Gagnon. It's kind of funny, Gagnon as the promo code. I don't know why exactly, but it is funny. And you're going to receive your first month for free. That's right, bluechew.com. Use the promo code Gagnon. Check it out. Blue Chew. Let's get back to the show. So even like this idea of the Anunnaki coming to enslave humanity, there's a perspective that you could look at it to say, well, maybe the Anunnaki, created mankind in order to get gold to then go heal the planet or heal the universe.
Heal their own planet.
And so there's almost a positive perspective on the Anunnaki as well.
But at the same time, both were done. Mankind was created, right? And then on one side of the earth, they were treated as a slave race and raped, and that created the Nephilim. Karma means action. On the other side, they were treated good. And with the story of the flood, they were given the information to recreate, right? And so in the story of Noah, 2 animals from all around the world were put on this gigantic boat. But in the Anunnaki story, that they were given the technology to recreate, which would be genetic modification.
So whether it's the Ugaritic texts, the Watchers of Enoch, the Anunnaki, Lucifer in the Garden of Eden, there's many different people and mystics throughout time have looked at these things from different perspectives. And they've drawn different conclusions based off that.
Yeah, well, that's what we all have to learn to do. We have to learn how to look at a story from 2 perspectives, at least both sides to a story. Look at anything like Russia-Ukraine conflict, Israel-Palestine, Republican Democrat. You have to look at every perspective. Otherwise, you're going to be enslaved to whichever one you've been sold. If you know one perspective, then you're enslaved.
Yeah, you have to, even if you believe one perspective, you should at least know what the other perspectives are.
Sure. I've come to learn that once you see the perspectives from many different angles, it's hard to pass a solid judgment on things, because you can see both. I mean, look, I'm diametrically opposed to evil.
Sure.
Right? And there's certain moral foundations and principles, right? So, we can see, like, for example, like, we could say the moral foundation. Okay, you can take you and I, and we can grab 10 other people, 10 different ages, 10 different races, 10 different religious backgrounds, but we'll be able to format a beautiful foundation, a moral foundation. For example, protect the innocent. Okay, so what's innocent? Well, innocent people. What's innocent? Women. Okay, children. Right? So innocent children. That's probably the foundation, right? The future. Okay, so we're going to protect the innocent children collectively. You protect mine, I protect yours. That's our tribe. Think back to when there was no back in the time.
Mm-hmm.
We just found fire,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we created this moral framework and foundation of which our society will be built,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the other side of like the mountain, there's another ragtag group of people, and they believe, they're like, you know what? I want to eat human flesh, or I want to have sex with a child, right? And then tells the other guy's like, I don't think that's that crazy at all, right? And somehow they just like attracts like, right? And they find each other.
And they breed an evil society.
They don't have children there, so they're up there and they're looking on the other side of the mountain and they see our tribe, and they're like, huh, right? Now to us, we look over there and we see evil, right? But they look down at us and see us as evil, for we are stopping them from doing what they feel is righteousness. And that's Satanism. And that's Aleister Crowley's whole premise of Thelema. Do what thou wilt, that will be the law. You know, if it feels good, it's because it is for you. And you're blessed, that's why you're famous, or you're blessed, that's why you're rich. So you deserve to celebrate yourself. You know, you deserve, there's a reason you're here is because you're blessed and everyone else are, in essence, peasants. You know?
Whatever you want to do.
Whatever you want.
That doesn't sound good to me. I don't like that.
No, because you're a good person. But if you were in essence a bad person, you'd be like, wow.
And where did Aleister Crowley get these ideas?
He was he's a scumbag. You know, he was a scumbag. They're like, he was called Aleister Crowley, the Great Beast, 666, right?
Yeah, the most wicked man in the world.
He called himself that. That's why it's in parentheses. That's what he prided himself in, that because he fed off people being afraid of him. You know, he's like, oh, you know, like that feels good. He was a British, born from a wealthy family. He was raised religious, turned away from religion. He was entered into various secret societies, like he was in OTO. He rose up the ladder in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He said, oh, you guys are all full of shit. I'm going to uncover the real mysteries. And then his story goes, which is probably bullshit, but he had like a guy that was like his apprentice or like his like lover or whatever it was. And they wanted to go to Egypt and do this ritual, I think from like the Necronomicon or one of these, like the Book of the Dead, one of these ancient Egyptian rites of passage to be able to like open the door and like receive great power, which in essence is what a genie is. And that's where the Arabic word for jinn, a jinn is a spirit of fire or smoke.
Interesting.
That's why alcohol means flesh-eating spirit. And a jinn is a jinn, and that's why it's called wine and spirits. So alcohol is used for dark magic.
It is.
100,000%, yeah. If you want, you know, voodoo, for example. Have you ever been to like a Haitian voodoo place or any of that stuff?
No, one time I went to Ripley's, believe it or not, and I saw some like voodoo, like ritual tools.
Yeah,
and I just got weird vibes, and I just I left. I didn't. Like
you come to Miami, you can go find it easy. It's nothing.
People do that all over. Huh?
I just wanted to see what type of what I was just curious to see what they were going to try to unleash. I was already. They can't do. They're not going to do shit.
Did you go to a ritual?
No, I paid the guy. Like, yeah. I like did the. Like one of the person I was in a relationship, and she's like, oh, psychics and this, and I was like, she's like, oh, and they can clean the energy and this and this and this, and I was like, listen, like I don't buy into this at all, but I'll show you, right? I'll show you. The guy's going to misdiagnose everything. I'm going to say things. And he's going to believe what I'm telling him because he can't see. I'm going to say I'm here because of these problems are not real. He's going to buy into it and elaborate bullshit me, thinking that I'm telling him the truth. This will prove he's full of shit. Because if he could actually see, he would not need me to tell him what the problem is.
Or he would know you're lying to him. If
you came to drink ayahuasca with me, I don't need to know what the problem is. I'm going to drink ayahuasca. You're going to drink ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is going to show me everything. I don't need to ask you a question. As long as you're on the diet proper and you're not on any drugs and things like this, I don't need to know anything. It's going to get fixed. That's the thing. So why would I need, so anyway, what they do, the first thing they do is they have this like crazy like bottle of alcohol, it's like different plants in it. And as soon as the guy drinks the thing, he spits it out, and I saw immediately he was fully in a trance. I was shocked. The guy was fully in a trance. He's like, tells you to drink it, and you grab it, and it's like grain alcohol. And I tried to drink some, and it was like burn, and I spit it in his face, much closer than we're sitting now, on accident, of course. He didn't even blink. That's how I'm like, oh man, he didn't even flinch, blink. Now I went, real loud, like he didn't even move. And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, this guy's in the trance, right? Anyway, he's like, bring me 2 dove and 2 chicken. But it's funny. Nothing, I can't report. I'm not endorsing this either. The guy was in a trance, but then I started looking into it. And that's how I understood. You know how they train? They just get drunk. Have you ever gotten so drunk from an alcohol that you can't smell it again for a while?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, fireball.
Okay. Even now, if you were to smell it, it would
like,
create.
Yeah.
That's how they train. They drink a special cocktail of plants and alcohols to the point that they become so drunk. Have you ever been so drunk that you say the next day, you're like, what happened? Someone's like, Mark, you slapped someone and called them a bitch, and you did this, and you pulled your dick out, and you're like, impossible. But it happened.
I'm not a violent drunk, but I get goofy. One time I went up to my buddy and I like ripped his shirt open, popped all his buttons off.
And you bit his nipples?
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, dude, you fucked my shirt up. And I was like, oh, my bad.
But you didn't remember it?
No, I mean, vaguely, but not really. I bought him a new shirt though.
Okay. Well, that's because, again, you're not a Satanist. But you didn't remember any of it, and people told you, and you didn't even believe it.
Yeah.
That's because al-Kul means flesh-eating spirit, because if you get drunk enough, then you give your lower self, your darkness, or an outside spirit possession of your body. So you do things, you don't remember anything, because if someone's possessed, they don't remember anything. That's the whole problem. So if you're practicing dark magic in the form of voodoo and any of these things, you train on alcohol, and you get so drunk, with the intention of allowing the spirit world to come into you. Wow. And in return, you get money. So when you come out of the trance, you got $150, but you're giving up your soul in return to it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what genie, it comes from the Arabic word jinn.
Wow.
And that's the idea of a genie, because the genie, and that's what all these people ultimately are looking for. A spirit can only enter you for 2 ways. One is that you summons it, right? You're trying to have it come in.
Some type of ritual or something.
Exactly. Or fear. Like a ghost or a ghoul or a god, rah, you go, and then it comes in possession. That's how it happens, because ultimately the fear is the nourishment, the food. The same way that if you leave a fruit out right now or a piece of meat, in here in Camp Gagnon, which is, by the way, not outside. We are.
Come on, dude, you're blowing our whole spot.
I'm sorry. We are outside right now.
Yeah, we're in the Adirondacks.
I apologize. We're in the middle.
Yeah, we're in Jordan. We're in Jordan.
Oh,
I wish.
I can't wait to go back. If you leave food out, what will happen? Maggots will just appear. Mm-hmm. Where'd they come from?
Like flies or something?
No, but if even right here, they just appear right out of the ether. The same thing is with spirits. And so that's the problem with the spiritual aspect of things, is people don't understand what they're playing with. Like if someone's in a higher altered state and they start going into a place of fear, and their mind is focused on the fear, and the fear is processing in the solar plexus, which is like our nuclear power plant, they're creating a lot of energy, and that energy is simply food for certain types of spirits to feast on. So is love. That's why love and light are connected, and dark and fear are connected. But they're on the principle of polarity. They're the opposites.
So alcohol, would that be more fear or more ritual?
It's just dark. It only opens up the dark spirits in the dark realms.
Even like a casual drink, like a glass of wine?
I mean, my brother, I'm not going to lie to you. Yes. Alcohol, period, right? Now, certainly certain things that can be used for medicines can be also used. But if you take alcohol in its original state wasn't really consumed the way that we consume it now. Like when you say like things were fermented in wines and alcohols, like in ancient Egypt, they weren't getting drunk off that. They were using it as an astringent to pull out the plant spirits. So they were drinking Blue Lotus in a wine, right? And in Greece too, the Eleusinian mysteries, for example. Like they weren't that's when the kind of intoxication through the alcohol started to come through. But they got that from the Egyptians. And remember, at the very beginning, you have the Indus Valley, then you have Mesopotamia, and then you have ancient Egypt. Old Kingdom Egypt was called Alchemet. And then the Greeks rise during, you have the time period of the Middle Kingdom, where you have, Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. Like they live for 20 to closer to 30 years collectively between them in the mystery schools in Egypt. So they were learning chemistry, they were learning alchemy, they were learning the mysteries, like an exchange program. And when they realized this is far too deep, like too much to you can't go to Peru for two weeks, drink ayahuasca 6 times, and think you're going to be an ayahuasquero and start serving it. Well, people do that, but it will be grand opening, grand closing. So these are wise enough men to understand. So what they did was they took the understanding of the metaphysics, the spiritual aspect of things through their direct experiences, the understanding of the chemistry, science of matter, the understanding of the alchemy, the science of spirit, and brought it back to Greece in the form of philosophy, right? And which became psychology. So the Greeks, the Ptolemy line, after Alexander the Great died, the 3 generals had 3 of the major areas. And so then that was the Ptolemaic line of the Greek merging in with the Egyptian. And that gave way to a lot of the future advancements of things, right? Then you gives way to the biblical aspect of Egypt and its empire status at the time of Abraham and then Moses. And then you have like the Hebrew Bible. Then you have all those other texts. That's why the oldest form of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament that exists, is called the Pentateuch, which is the Greek translation of the 5 books of Moses. And then the Septuagint is the entirety of the whole work.
I see.
And then Greek rose, and then it fell to Rome, and then Rome took that and then converted it to Latin from Greek and made it everything Roman
Catholic,
and then Roman Catholic
became the Russian Orthodox. And
absolutely the Russian Orthodox. I mean, you had the Vikings come through. The Vikings, the Slavs were like the slaves. The Vikings would come through and grabbing the Slavs, created Kiev and Rus, which was like 1000 AD, 1,000 years ago. And then like one of the King Ulrich or whatever, like they converted to Christianity, created the Orthodox. But that orthodoxy that we say, that Christian Orthodox, that originally was Coptic in Egypt.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard. I'm
familiar with like Coptic Christians.
Yeah, Coptic Christians, Ethiopian Coptic Christianity. That stuff predates Jesus.
Like the roots of it?
The perspective of Christian as a Christ, like whether you say like Christ, what we would say like Christ consciousness, the Christ, like the last Buddha is Maitreya Buddha.
I see. You're talking about the.
They say that's Jesus too. That's how they. We're going to triangulate it and we're going to piece things together to fit in our existing belief narratives until we wake the fuck up.
You're talking about the metaphysical understanding of the Christ figure.
Yes. A Christ. What is the difference between a Buddha, a Christ, right? A Buddha means the Enlightened One. A Christ is Enlightened One. Lucifer is Enlightened One. Like everything has to do with a being. And the way I look at Enlightened One is far more practical and way less spiritual. Like the way I look at it is in the presence of the Enlightened One. Guru, the word guru means the remover of darkness. I think it's in Avesta, in Old Farsi. That's where it came from originally, the word. Of course, the Indian Sanskrit, it's from India. It's like, okay.
Regardless.
The only reason it's from India is because the British conquered India, wrote everything in English, and then you read it, and they said it came from there. Like it didn't come, like a lot of the stuff didn't come from
Regardless, guru is an old word.
Yeah, and then from Latin in Rome, it turned into English. And then now English has been, since England became a great empire, everything got converted into English. And the process of that is very simple, because what we talked about Emperor Constantine in 320, 2 years, Emperor Constantine took control. One, defeated his uncle and said, okay, I'm going to create a unified religion. So he called upon the greatest Christian minds or preachers or whatever you want to say. He called upon the priests from the old gods and the new ways and brought everything together to what we refer to as the Council of Nicaea. And from like 323 to 325 AD, they, no one's leaving here until we have one thing that works, right? And so they understood the history of belief through the world. They understood what's worked the longest. They understood what worked in ancient cultures and ancient societies to last 1,000 years, for example. Isis and Cleopatra was the end of the Ptolemy line. That ruled for 600 years. It's a good start. Let's maybe learn something from how they ruled and controlled the minds and spirits of the people, right? And that was the goal. That's always the goal of the ruler, to maintain control.
Interesting.
To keep power, right?
Now, I don't want to derail you, but you had mentioned a little bit earlier this idea that Freemasonry was built on these principles, on some of these earlier texts. I'm curious, can you expound on what you understand about Freemasonry and how it connects to these earlier mystic texts?
Yeah, so the Freemasons would love to say that they come from ancient Egypt. Right? Mm-hmm. The interesting part about it is they do, but they don't realize it. Now, what is it called? A caveat?
Sure.
A caveat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Caviar.
let's have some caviar. No, the thing is where is the caviar?
I know. We're going to get it. We're outside. We're deep in the forest right now.
We are.
It's hard to get.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised what they can bring in the middle of the desert. We were eating the best lamb ever. They have it's amazing what can be done. Anyway, Masons, right? Majority of Masons is a social club, is a civil society. When our founding fathers of our United States, mm-hmm. I'm American, our founding fathers were formulating what would be the Bill of Rights and then the Constitution. We were under British control. The Boston Tea Party, there was a curfew. No more than 2 men could not meet in public, and there was a curfew at sundown, 7 o'clock. So the way that these men were able to meet with these British troops everywhere is they said they were a civil society. They were discussing
the matters of
betterment of the civil society, right? That's what they were meeting in, kind of secret, but kind of not, right? At first. And it's beyond proven that the majority of our founding fathers were Masons, right? Mm-hmm. And that all of our presidents, you have Abraham Lincoln wasn't a Mason, assassinated. You had JFK, the first Roman Catholic president, he was assassinated. Trump, he's not a Mason. And so on. And then there's also the Irish version of it, which is called the Hibernians. And the Hibernians are in the military and our police forces, right? No one ever hears about those.
And that's just another sort of social society.
On the entry point, mm-hmm. on the entry level. And so every group has morals and principles. Albert Pike's book was called Morals and Dogma. Morals is the foundation of our organization, and dogma is what we tell everyone so they remember and their indoctrination. Here's our morals and here's our dogma. Memorize it. So it's the same concept. That's the name of his book. It's funny. And so, but within Masonry, there you have the higher levels, right? And then you have, of course, the Illuminati degrees, right? And so the Illuminati was created by Adam Weishaupt in 1776 in Bavaria, right? And when you track future of how that gets created and how it gets incorporated into the creation of the Jesuit order, the Society of Jesus within the Catholic Church, that was an opposition to counteract the creation of Christianity, non-Roman Catholicism.
The Jesuits?
Yeah, for sure. In the 1500s. With the rise of England and the King James Bible, and everyone was going away from the Roman Catholic Church, and the Jesuits were created to inject into these Christian organizations and bring them back to Rome. Well, I'll go to that in a second.
When you say Christian, you mean Reformed Christian, like King James?
King James.
Got it.
Not Latin. You have King Henry VIII, right? He started that process, and then King Henry VIII, right? Mm-hmm. He's very famous. Mm-hmm. But his grandson was King James, right? So within 2 generations, King James said, "Hey, I want to divorce my French wife." Oh no, the Pope said no. We have peace. He says, "Really? So you telling me do this, or he's not gonna regret it." He said, "Remember who you're talking to. I'm the Pope." He says, "Okay." They already had it in play because they had already been putting this in play. So now we're going to take the Roman Catholic Bible that is written in Latin that no one's allowed to touch, that they're mostly illiterate anyway at the time. And every Sunday, the person from Rome speaks in the church and tells you, reads from Latin, says whatever he wants, tells you what it means, and they keep control over the English-speaking nations. But as England and Spain and Portugal became superpowers with boat technology that they learned from the Vikings, they started to get very wealthy and asking less permission from the Pope for things. And so King James said, okay, fine. I'm going to take the Bible and I'm going to write it in English and I'm going to distribute it amongst the people. And now no longer is the vessel of Christ on earth the Pope of Rome. It's going to be the King of England. And that book just happened to be the one that came to America, for example. And he was like 24. So between Constantine, who was 23, deciding to change it, and the King James, who was like 24 years old, I mean, the world in the last 1700 years, overwhelming majority of the world's population's spiritual control has been contoured by a 20-something-year-old spoiled brat that did nothing other than get born and inherit an empire.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Isn't it amazing?
Now to the Masons.
Sorry, the Masons.
We got derailed. That's crazy, though.
No, that's the Masons. So if you the nefarious way, like so. The Masons, the story of the Masons is that it goes to like the Temple of Solomon, right? And so they believe in Hiram Abiff. Like Hiram Abiff was the great builder, the master mason, right? And so he was the one who created the codes, and not just like to physically build the temple, but like the codes within the temple to connect to the higher source, right? His name was, according to Masonic lore, his name was Hiram Abiff. And after he created it, him and the other master masons, which means builders, were killed, right? But if you go back to like the biblical stuff, the Masons, the builders of England, Masons, the builders of the Great Temple, it's actually it connects to something that connects everything together. In the story, you know how we always have the story of like evil and darkness, right? And so on, right? And there's always been an understanding of like magic. There's actually a term in Exodus is called Erev. And so during Exodus, after the 10th plague and Moses, the Pharaoh told Moses, take these people and get the hell out of here, right? So when he freed these Hebrew people and they start going off into their Exodus, right? They start moving through there. He took his darkest sorcerers and magicians and injected them in with the Hebrew people to create chaos, right? And they're called the Erev. And in the story, in the Hebrew Bible, it says that God warned Moses on several occasions, like, you have been infiltrated. You need to get rid of these people. So as the story goes, whenever there was the doubt, like, where are we going? Like, what's going on? Like, they're like, we should just go back. That's the Erev, right?
Interesting.
Now, when Moses went up to receive the commandments and was gone for like 40 days and 40 nights, they're like, what's happening? And they're like, hey, by the way, what if he's dead? We're standing here. We have nothing. Quickly, we must take all, because they were given a lot of treasures Egyptian treasures in gold. Quickly, we must worship the old gods and apologize for listening to Moses. Let's build the golden calf, right? And so when he came down and saw them worshiping the golden calf, right? This is the Erev, right? And so the Erev, they're not Jews. So they're called Jews. So when you talk about the biggest conspiracy, and I have no idea, we're like, somehow we're breaking news here, but it's in the Bible. It's shocking how this works. In works like the Zohar, right? One of the biggest works in Judaism. Zohar was downloaded by one of the greatest rabbis named Rabbi Yochai, right? And in the Zohar, which is collectively considered in Judaism to be like one of the great masterworks. Like the guy's stories, he was in a cave for like 10 years downloading this information, like Prophet Muhammad of Islam style, like very, 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 very high level stuff. There's no way this guy sat here and thought about this stuff. Like he clearly had the connection. But in this book, the Zohar, he's talking about the Erev Rav, which are called the false Jews, the dark sorcerers of Egypt, over 280 times. It's the whole thing is warning the Jewish people about the same thing that of which God. That's why after the golden calf, God said, "See, told you," and then they executed something like 3,000 of the people that built the golden calf. These were the Erev Rav. In the story of King Saul. Mm-hmm. So King Saul was chosen to be the king before David, right? And King Saul was fighting what they call the Amalek, right? Amalek would be just like in Christianity would say like the Satanists or something, the evil ones, right? The opposition. And after there was this like big war, God commanded King Saul to kill every man, woman, and child and every animal, right? Now, they say that's because these Erev Rav were such powerful sorcerers that they were shapeshifters. Like, right? And so then now...
You couldn't tell who they were.
Yes. I mean, again, do I believe like that humans have the ability to shapeshift like David Icke style reptilian stuff?
Right.
No. Do I believe people possess magic and jinn in the power to be able to make you see different things? 100,000% for sure. So it's not like, why would something need to physically manifest when
you could just change someone's consciousness?
A genie says, right? And so in the story of the genie is a great depiction of this. So when you hear about stuff like the Rothschilds, when you hear George Soros, but you can see the interview where he says, he helped Nazis find Jews. Like it's an interview. Just type in George Soros interview Nazis, right? He's telling you that he was doing this. He would run off in the middle of the night and say, help me. And they say, oh my God. And they would hide him with the other Jewish people. That he would sneak out, tell the Nazis where they are, and they come and execute the people. And he's a Hungarian-born Jew. And the guy in the interview is like, oh my God, that must have been so hard to deal with. He goes, no, not really. And they're like, no? He's like, no, it's where I learned. If I didn't do it, someone else would have. And this really helped me in life because it helped me have no emotions when it comes to the markets.
George Soros?
George Soros interview. It's on like 2020 or Dateline NBC, old interview. Watch it, right? In his like auto, he also said he didn't believe in God until he realized that he was the Messiah.
He said that?
Yeah. In the interview, he says, do you believe in, you're Jewish? He says, no. He said, I was born. He's like, no. And they go, do you believe in God? He goes, no. Right? So the question is, how can you be a Christian if you don't believe in God? How can you be a Muslim if you don't believe in God? How can you be a Jew if you don't believe in God? Mm-hmm. We agree?
Of course.
Okay. So, but yet, George Soros, if you were to say something about him, he's going to get defended and you're saying you're anti-Semitic. If you say anything about the Rothschilds, right? But yet these people, there's a lot of talk about the Rothschilds. For example, like it's known that Hitler didn't know his father and was born in Austria. Well, some of the, quote, conspiracies is that his mother was one of the housekeepers at Baron de Rothschild of Austria's home.
Oh, wow.
Right? And then if you look at some of the initial, processes of how the National Socialist Party of which became the Nazi Party got funded, and how he rose to power, how he went to jail and then had Mein Kampf as soon as he came out, and then he was the vice chancellor, and then the Reichstag building burned down. He blamed the Jews. They said it's your fault, and then they kicked the chancellor off. And he rose to power. And like the same day, there were like 10,000 what would be called SS guys wearing brand new Hugo Boss suits. Do you know how long it takes to hand stitch a suit?
Right.
One suit?
Yeah.
How do you have 10,000 suits? Like,
this is like an organized coup.
There's beyond funding. I mean, Hitler was considered Time Man of the Year. He was blessed by the Pope before he went off and invaded Poland. Think about this, right? And so throughout our time, we've heard all of these things, and we're like, okay, the Rothschilds and this, and it's like, oh, why are the Jews behind? Yeah, Freemasons. The Freemasons are really Jews. You hear all this stuff about the Jews, But what we don't realize is that most of these people, there are certain foundational core principles of what it means to be Jewish.
Right. They might be ethnically born from Jewish parents, but they're not believing in God or,
exactly
preserving the Shabbos or anything like that.
Or just believe in God.
Yeah,
right?
it's bare minimum.
This guy Maimonides wrote like the 13 pillars of Judaism, the 13 pillars of faith. There's only one God. Well, in Islam, they say La ilaha illallah. There's only one God, and God is one. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's like the foundation of Abrahamic religions, right? And then there's and pretty much it's all the same foundational beliefs through the three major Abrahamic faiths, right? It's pretty much 90% the same as far as the foundation and moral principles. But when you talk about like the Masons, for example, now with the understanding of who the Erev Rab are, you have to remember when the Torah was revealed, there were Erev Rab there, which were dark sorcerers from Egypt. When you move forward through the history, there are these infiltrators that are from through Exodus that have never ceased to exist. Now you track and you see different organizations that somehow, how is this organization and that organization in so much alignment but appear to be polar opposites? And the answer is, right, their commitment to the dark side.
It's the modern Erev Rav.
Exactly. And Erev Rav, and if you even look it up, I was watching this one guy, Rabbi Harry, told me about it. I was in a ceremony. I was talking about like I called the handlers. So who's in the handlers? Well, the handlers are physical representation, the World Economic Forum, the New World Order, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Committee of 300. There's. I mean, we spend an hour listing every single organizations that's a part. The Illuminati, the Jesuits. We're going to leave out some of the names so we don't get Bagnock hit with a meteor.
Please.
We'll leave some of that out for another episode. We'll leave it for the bunker edition.
Exactly. We're in the same place.
Yeah, the bunker edition. And again, these are quote conspiracies, right? So is it true? Is it not? I don't know. But when you follow through time, so many things that correlate to the same thing, isn't it interesting that so many things have that are supposed to be complete opposites? Like when you look at even the ideologies, like when you look at like some of the they say the back of the dollar bill, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Secular Order. When you hear the ends justify the means, carrots and sticks. When you hear about like Hegelian, like these are all just like variations, Hegelian dialectic, thesis versus antithesis equals synthesis. And when you see that applied to Iran, Iraq, when you see that applied to East and West Germany, North and South Korea, like that's just modern times. Like you can track back you can just track it for 1,000 years and see these psychologies, because these people are dark. We have to remember, like, these handlers are masters. They're masters, like on the highest level of mastery. They know everything. Everything we're talking about now is understood, is like clear. It's not, is it real? Is it not? No. It's like there's a book, and I can guarantee you it has everything that spelled out, so there's no confusion. No one's wasting any time in the great mystery, right?
So why were so many founding fathers Masons?
Well, again, I mean, the principles of America is built off of Mason foundations, right? And that's obviously not a bad thing. But
right, I mean, some of the principles are pretty good.
Masonry was infiltrated by the Illuminati. It was taken by the Illuminati. Like, it was infiltrated and taken from the ground up by the Illuminati. When King James created the King James Bible, right? And at the time, the superpowers were England, France, Spain, Portugal, right? Spain and Portugal went south, found South America, right? Go back to the Pope. The Pope said, okay, we'll draw a line here. Brazil is Portuguese and everything else is Spanish, right? And the British went and the French went east. They found North America, right? Canada. The Vikings found it before that. But the Vikings are the reason why all this stuff, we can blame the Vikings, because the Vikings came from Scandinavia and sailed and found England at, 800 AD and started invading England, then started invading France. And then they started to kind of cut a deal with France first. And then they cut a deal with England. And that's what certain aspects, certain parts of England were Viking were Viking. Like there's I can't remember the name of the part of England, such as the B. There's a part of England that's B. Those were Vikings.
Brighton?
No, no, Britain is an old name for Britannia. But
I've heard there's specific like Viking towns. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. They were given lands, and then eventually they were breeding with the British, and that Viking blood, right, bred in with French, and bred in, and then you fast forward a few hundred years, and the Vikings, they loved to race in their blood. That's when the Crusades, but the key was that the technology of going on boats over the open ocean were given to Europe now. So now England was able to become a wealthy empire, Spain a wealthy empire, Portugal a wealthy empire, France. And when you have money, you know what you worry about less? What you say about my soul, right? And so that's what gave them the balls to go against Rome. And that's all. It all has to do with power control and the not needing Rome anymore.
So it is the Vikings' fault.
It's the Vikings.
Come on, Vikings.
The Vikings did it, but the Masons were infiltrated by the Illuminati.
And when you say Illuminati, you mean like an actual secret society made up of actual people?
It doesn't seem to be that secret anymore. ChatGPT confirms it. I looked at it. It was interesting. Yeah.
Well, everyone knows the term now. Like when people say Illuminati now, I think they are sort of talking about like, like these, handlers that control all the world's affairs that,
They're one aspect of it. I don't think that's the end all be all. Like the Illuminati, there, we did it. We've identified them. That's not how it works. The Illuminati was, there was a Jesuit lawyer named Adam Weishaupt, who created the Bavarian Illuminati in 1776. They started to integrate through Masonry, which was all through Europe at the time.
And the Masons at the time were like a little more pure, maybe? Like this was like a social group? Or were they,
I think so.
Or were they practicing like, magic and things like that?
It's hard to say because there's not much history about them being evil until later. But again, the Masons were always talked about and never the Illuminati. Like the Illuminati was not a conversation. It was not real. Like the Illuminati, there's no such thing. Remember, like 12 years ago, there was no such thing as the Illuminati, right? New World Order is an entire one world concept of the Illuminati. Like that is a Illuminati concept. Albert Pike confirmed that. Who's one of the biggest of modern Masonry. Talks about that as well. That's biblical too. What is the Antichrist supposed to come? The Antichrist will. The Muslims say that the Dajjal will be able to speak to all languages and speak to all people at the same time, right? He will be in version day is night, night is day, right?
He'll have the KFR on his forehead, and the true believers will see it.
Yeah, and he'll have like one eye. Well, I don't know why this. Like he's gonna have one eye that's bad. He's gonna like club leg.
He'll come from the east.
He's gonna saw someone in half and then put them back together.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's different interpretations of
the Yajuj and the Majuj will be released.
Yeah, Gog and Magog.
Yeah.
It's
kind of pretty wild.
Which is with Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah, Gog and Magog.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. But I'm always so curious, like the Masons and like thinking about people in history that like possessed technology or like moved the world forward. Like even people like Aleister Crowley, like apparently he was convening with like a demon that he always talked about, Lamb. And I'm always curious, like, is that real magic that these people are practicing? Like,
I think he was a bullshit artist.
You think it was all just a con?
Aleister Crowley was one of the dirtiest scumbags to lying bullshit artists to ever live. I'll tell you why. He was in some of these, they're practicing like magic, but I understand what it would take to really make something happen. Okay? Like to really make something happen. Well, one way is by drinking the most powerful medicine on earth, ayahuasca. Okay? So to sit here and think you're going to read some spell out of a book and summons, it would take a lot more than that. That's where the sacrifices and the blood and all that stuff comes in, because you're bringing energetic offerings of life, right? So he understood certain things. He During World War I, he was a spy for the British. It was a conspiracy. It's fully understood. And I think before the end of World War I, or right at the end, he came to America, right? After he went and did his ritual and supposedly got contact with the dark forces and became the master, the great beast, right? He came to America. Where did he go? Los Angeles, of course. You know, Aleister Crowley is on like the cover of Dr. Pepper from the Beatles. He was a cultural icon while he was alive.
Mr. Crowley is a song from Ozzy Osbourne.
Ah, good point.
Yeah.
And so he created Thelema. The practice or ritual was called sex magic with a K, right? And then sex magic included a sigil, which is we referred to earlier, which is in his case, satanic symbol with various runes in the middle, writing. And in there, we would have very crazy stuff. For example, some of his rituals would have, obviously, a lot of male-on-male sex. The combination of the semen going in each person, and then the menstrual blood being used in the middle, right? And by the way, massive drug use, of course. To even think this was a good idea.
What kind of drugs? Alcohol?
Everything.
Heroin.
Everything. I mean, the guy died of gonorrhea. He was a drug-riddled, drug addict, disease scumbag. Okay, like on the highest level of dirt. Okay, and he gave nothing to the world. He's like trash. He didn't have any magic. You can look at him. He's like taking pictures like this. Like get the fuck out of here.
Do you think there were other people like inventors? Like I've always heard like little conspiracies, like like Nikola Tesla or Edison. Like are they tapping into something?
Yeah, sure. Some people are wired, brother. Like Nikola Tesla. I mean, come on. Who can compete with that? I mean, Edison was a genius. Edison was a genius who worked hard. He said he didn't. They said in an interview, he said they said, I heard you failed 10,000 times to make the light bulb. He said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I learned 999 ways it didn't work. Right? He was a genius.
Right.
Tesla was connected. Tesla was a different person. I still don't understand what he meant when he said, when we understand the power of the number of 3, we'll understand the secrets of the universe. Okay. And then you would think the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Okay. Maybe. But he wasn't religious like that. But there are certain people that are connected, certain people tapped in, certain people can see certain things, and so on. Aleister Crowley was not one of them, okay? And so what happened was he created his organization and moved it to Los Angeles, where he was having these sex magic rituals. Do what thou wilt, that will be the law. So that's very intriguing to the wealthy and influential people. I can do whatever I want and feel good about it.
Great.
But that's not what I was told. That's because you were lied to. Let me explain to you who's in control of this world. In your Bible, it says that Lucifer was sent down to rule on earth. And that's where the temptation comes from. Your own light. As long as you're standing in your own light, it's good. This is Satanism, right? Masked in spiritual Luciferianism. That is a better explanation of the whole thing. So what happened was he came to Los Angeles with a small companionship. One of them was a guy named Captain Jack Parsons and his wife, right? Captain Jack Parsons created propulsion technology for NASA, right? And then you take NASA with the Nazi stuff, and you're like, and that's shortly after. That's a few decades later. But one of his early pupils was a man named L. Ron Hubbard. And L. Ron Hubbard ended up having extracurricular sexual activity with Captain Jack Parsons' wife, and he got excommunicated. He later went on to write a science fiction book called Dianetics, and he later created a religion called Scientology. And if you hear the rumors of Scientology, what is it? Well, the wealthy and the elite of Hollywood, they come in, and it's a place for them to come, and they can tell their secrets and not be judged, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in essence, it's the same thing as Thelema with a science fiction creative perspective to say, whatever you want to do, there's a reason we're in this room. We are the rulers. When you hear like Yoel Noah Harari talk about not some God invisible in the clouds, The clouds we create, right? That's very, satanic, right? Like we are the gods, right? But then he's supposed to be a Jewish guy from Israel with a husband, right? Klaus Schwab, when he says the fourth industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution means the Fourth Reich. Hitler was the general of the Third Reich. The Third Reich was to create a war and an empire that encompasses a landmass large enough to have all natural resources to rule the world, to be able to run all the scientific experiments. At the beginning, they thought they were going to make the Uberman, right? The better. When they realized that doesn't work, crystal meth isn't the solution, they found out the hard way. They kicked major ass for the first few years, which would happen as soon as you start taking Adderall, which is crystal meth. And then eventually he's crashed real hard. That's what happened. He was injecting it in his arm. That's why he couldn't move his arm. Right. The SS, it's well known, the drugs with the Nazis, right?
It's crazy.
Specifically, it was crystal meth, which was created by the Nazis, as well as the polio vaccine, right? I mean, it's crazy how this works. But
I thought it was Jonas Salk.
Huh?
I thought it was Jonas Salk that did polio vaccine.
Who's that?
I thought it was like an inventor that made polio vaccine.
Well, I thought maybe that's the guy's name, but from what I understand, the vaccine for polio, maybe it was a better version of it, I don't know, but originally I think polio, or there's a few different vaccines that were made during Nazi Germany.
Interesting.
And of course, lots of drugs and lots of other crazy shit. And that also is the different perspective, because after that, they realized instead of trying to make superhumans, why don't we dumb everyone down? I mean, the first time fluorides were first used in humans was used, I'm sure you've heard that they use like highly fluorinated water in prison systems to keep everyone docile. That was discovered by the Nazis in the concentration camps.
And why were the Nazis so obsessed with like the occult and mystical
Power
religions?
And control, my brother. Why else? Why were they going to Antarctica? Why were they looking for the Holy Grail? Why were they looking for the Ark of the Covenant? Why were they looking for all that? Why did they understand the occult? Why was the SS and Himmler, right? Himmler was the spirit.
Himmler, yeah.
Heinrich Himmler was the spiritual leader of them, and a lot of people would like to say that other leaders of different empires currently are working with different things to maintain and keep power. And then how do they do that? Okay, fear. Okay, but it's like mind control. Like there's no doubt that within the German nation, the German country, that the Nazi thing was a spirit and an ideology that kind of possessed the people.
Right.
And
good people became Nazis overnight.
I mean, it just took them, and you can see that it's called influence en masse, which is like to influence the masses, to mesmerize the people, right? That's a form of magic, even just the etymology, like we have these phones, right? And these phones is a scrying mirror. It's the black mirror, group of people get together. They have an ideology, something they want to create. They create it technically, right? In the form digitally, which we call a program. They upload the program, then you change the channel, you click the channel and you download the program. I mean, it's all magic. Everything at the end of the day is all magic. It's all abracadabra. Everything is involved in this, like the psychology, all of these various tools, and it's the understanding of the Hegelian dialectic and the understanding of we accept two things, the left side of the brain, the right side of the brain, masculine and feminine. That's why we have Pepsi, Coke, Republican, Democrat, NFC, AFC. It's the alternative choice. Hey, Mark, you hungry? Would you like to eat? Five Guys or pizza? It doesn't matter which one you choose because I gave you the options. The illusion of choice. And that ties back to the oldest stories of the genies.
So do you think there's political leaders and wealthy people today that are using this type of magic to control people?
Sure. I mean, we can call that magic psychology in many ways. There's been a lot of dirty psychology. For example, you have Karl Marx created Marxism. Marxism was an idea, right? And an idea implemented, an idea accepted within the perspective of a singular mind would be called a philosophy. The usage of that outwardly through words is called a psychology. And how effective is it? Well, it converted an entire country, and that communist concept still exists till this day. We're infiltrated with it now. Democratic Socialism, communism, or just fascism, they're just expressions of the same concept created by one guy, right? Who is most likely an Erev Rav, right?
So, in conclusion, I guess, we need to be aware of all different perspectives and all the different angles and try to identify how the people behind these perspectives are trying to use them for control.
Absolutely. We need to wake the fuck up. We need to wake up, and we need to stop. You know the story of the Arthurian tale about the knight slaying the dragon, right? So the knight in the golden armor, Percival, goes into the castle, let's say, right? There's the dragon, whether there's the princess there or the sitting on top of the gold, but he slays the dragon. So you can't kill the dragon because the dragon represents our cortex, your reptilian brain. The reptilian brain has two things, fight or flight. I'm programmed fight. You are programmed?
Probably flight.
Flight?
Yeah, probably. I'm getting the fuck out of there.
It's one or the other. Because, meaning, a bomb goes off. You either stop and need to know what it is, or you run.
I'm out.
Okay, so you're flight, I'm fight. But the thing is that on the principle of polarity, the Hermetic principles, right? The 7 Hermetic principles, the 7 laws of Thoth, that Hermes was the god of wisdom that comes from Egyptian god of Thoth, which is god of wisdom, which is the 7 universal laws. The principle of polarity is the 3rd one, right? Here's on one side and the other, but it's the same thing on the plane. Fight, flight. As released through our reptilian brain, which is our brainstem, our cortex, the serpent brain, right? We release a chemical, right? I process that chemical as attack. You said you process the chemical as run. Either way, we're a slave to it because we are, in essence, having a chemical response. It's not a controlled emotion, right? And so knowing that, that's how the magic is effective. The sky's falling, COVID. The sky's falling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. But no one stops to look to see if the sky's falling. And when you do stop to look to see if the sky's falling, we got a name for you. Conspiracy theory, we're like name calling, right? And so it's actually really silly if you think about it, because we just have a bunch of people and we tell everyone the program name you call someone for something, right? Conspiracy theorists, that was created after by the CIA, after anyone who questioned the approved narrative of the Kennedy assassination, right? And so on. So we name call like children. We don't do any research. We assume. It's like everyone walking around thinking that Santa Claus is real because we still have never been woken up to realize it's not. But then half the world thinks the Easter Bunny's still real. That's what we're living in. So what we need to do is stop, shake it off, right? Wake the fuck up, right? Don't give our emotions to something immediately. If you're intrigued by something, or if you hear a story and someone says, Lucifer, stop and look and see what it really means. Someone says, ISIS, in any form, right? Stop and then go do some research and look at the other end of the perspective so you can have both perspectives so you can see the full picture and stop falling for the spells of the genies.
Well, thank you for helping me kill the dragon today. Shaman Omar. Let's do it again.
For sure.
Thank you, brother.
Of course.
Appreciate you.